Shalom. Pastor coming back at you with the truth, giving all praises to Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai Ba'Shem, Kakodash. I'm going to make this quick, unless the Spirit jump on me. But I want to just go quick and to the point. But let's see what the Spirit takes me. This right here, I just came across this video. Let me bring this up a little bit. As you can see, this is roughly, it says live delegates arrive at the Russia-Africa Forum. So we're dealing with certain African nations coming together with Russia, and as you know, you have China. The corporations of China, the Chinese government, and many of the corporations are down there in various parts of Africa, and they're building up the infrastructure of the certain African areas and businesses, and because the so-called Chinese, they pretty much out surpassed America as far as manufacturing. And what made America great was manufacturing. You know, everything came out of America. Now, America is the as you read up on America, it's become the biggest consumer. You know, consumer of resources, mainly from or products, mainly from China. So you have these alliances now, which don't include America. You know, led by Russia, or co-led by, if that's a word, China and Russia working together. And China is a communist / capitalist government. Anyway, it says live delegates arrive at the Russia-African Forum. It says African leaders arrive. Now, it doesn't go into detail on how many. It mentions Egypt, which was one of the key countries, but it says African leaders, so we're not talking about one African country. And I'm going to keep up on this. Anyway, it says African leaders arrive at the Russia-Africa summit, an economic forum. So why are they having a summit? They're calling the summit to discuss economics. It says, oh, and by the way, the alliance that I was going to mention is BRICS, acronym for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And the U.S. is not involved in that. Like I said, these nations are forming their own, how can you say, pacts, compacts, agreements, organizations, multinational organizations. It says, let me read that again. African leaders arrive at the Russia-Africa Summit and Economic Forum, co-chaired by Russia and Egypt in Sochi, October 2022. The event is taking place at the Sirius Park of Science and Art on October 23 and 24. And I'm gonna keep my eyes on this situation. or this gathering. Now we're looking, dealing with a lot of prophecy. A lot of prophecies are coming to pass. Anyway, it says attendees are expected to focus on areas of growth, joint long-term projects, and economic zones. Russian President Vladimir Putin and his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, which I did a video about, just they're rioting to try to get this guy out of office, addressed a meeting on 23 October and hold a working breakfast with heads of Africa's leading regional organizations. So it's not just dealing with Egypt, according to a Kremlin aide. Let me let you see some of this here. That's Rwanda Air. So this individual with the cowboy hat, he's the president of Sudan. Well, Sudan was broken up into South and North Sudan. They treating them Africans good because there's a lot of resources in Africa. And they're not thinking about the United States. Getting whisked off in a Mercedes. Anyway, that's all I'm going to do. Now let me go to the scripture. Give you a quick scripture. Ezekiel 38. If you put in Gog, right, or Gog and Magog, or Magog, what's going to come up? Most of the scriptures is going to be found in Ezekiel, the 38th chapter. And Gog is also mentioned in one of the either first or second Chronicles, and also mentioned in Revelation, the 20th chapter. Okay, so it says here. Let me start from the top, which I really didn't want to, but it says, and the word of the Lord, or Yahweh, came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, because the Most High is going to use Gog and Magog, which is Russia. Now that no man's land above Media, going northeast, that's Russia. And at that time, going back more than 2,000 years ago, that was like no man's land. And what happened was these people pushed up further north. Anyway, it says, which is known as Russia today. It says, third verse, and say, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. And when you look at an ancient biblical map, Meshech and Tubal is around the areas of Turkey, not that far from Germany and that cluster of European nations. It says, that's why you hear a lot about Turkey in the news. It says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws And I will bring thee forth, and thine armies, horses and horsemen. Modern day horses, the modern day horsemen are these the military men, because you're going to have a troops down there in the Levant, the valley of Jehoshaphat. All of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields. Those are weapons. The modern day weapons are missiles. All of them handling swords. And the modern day sword, and this shows you right here, this is a future prophecy. So they're not going to armies are not going to come down with swords in their hand. The army that comes down with swords going to be wiped out by an army that possesses missiles or AK-47s. That's a slaughter. You can't. There's this old saying: "Don't bring a knife to a gunfight." Well, the ancient sword will not do it in the modern world. Anyway, it says Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them. Persia are the people of Iran. Ethiopia is an African nation in the land of Ham. And Libya is North Africa. That's Muammar Gaddafi. You think about Muammar Gaddafi, he was the head of Libya. It says Persia, Iran, Ethiopia, which is Kush, and Libya with them, all of them with shields and helmets. So ultimately, you're going to have African nations involved in the war of Armageddon. It says Gomar and all the bands, all his bands, the house of Togarmah. That's the cluster of European nations, which you can go on an ancient biblical map, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It says of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared, and prepare thyself, thou and all thy company. So what company is it talking about? We read about Gog, Magog. We read about Meshach and Tubal. We read about Togarmah. We went over in the 5th verse, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya, which are Ethiopia and Libya are African nations. It says Gomar and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself. Ultimately, this economic gathering is going to turn into war. Thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. So who's going to be a guard unto these African nations in Persia? These so-called European nations. So now what I want to do is, you can read this whole chapter. When you go to the 39th chapter of Ezekiel, it goes into the war and the aftermath of war. How they're going to have men putting flags of dead bodies to be buried, which I'm not going to go into. But what I do want to go to is Revelation 20. Revelation 20. And 7. Like I said, Gog and Magog is not mentioned too many times in the scriptures. It's mentioned a number of times in Ezekiel 38 and 39, and it's mentioned in Revelation. So we know that the visions that Ezekiel saw and recorded are the same visions, the same event that John saw and recorded. Revelation 20 verse 7, And when 1,000 years are expired, Satan represents the so-called white man, shall be loose out of his prison and shall go out to deceive the nations. And this goes back to the time of Christopher Columbus establishing the so-called New World. And they brought Christianity with them, their form of Christianity, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle. The number of them is as the sand of the sea. And they went, 9th verse, and they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the camp of the saints. The camp of the saints are two things. The camp of the saints are the Israelites, and the camp of the saints is also the land of so-called Israel. And the beloved city. The beloved city are the Israelites. To tell you that in Isaiah 52. So the Most High compares the land of Israel to the people of Israel. And fire came down. There goes fire again. Fire, and that fire is talking about these ICBM missiles destroying certain parts of the earth, but the U.S. would be utterly destroyed. Came down from the Most High out of heaven and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone,